Alright, this is Nicholas Short, and this is another video. Here are some things I found after 25 years of research, so let's start with part 1. So let's say that you're Marcus Allen, or you're sending Marcus Allen to the moon. Severe environment, there's going to be harsh lighting, it's going to be an extreme environment, right? And you're going to send Marcus with a Hasselblad 500 EL camera, and you're going to give him two lenses, 80mm and a 250mm lens that he could snap on at will. Alright, so what do you think Marcus is going to bring with him? What would you bring with you if you only had your choice of, say, two additional pieces for the camera? Well, I'm no professional, but I'm going to guess. And I'm going to say one would be a circular polarizing filter, or CPL, and the other one would almost definitely be a lens hood. That's right, a $5 piece of plastic to prevent lens flares. The reason why is because without a lens hood outside, even out here on Earth, you get these terrible artifacts. Lens flares are not desirable most of the time. Just ask any photographer. Once in a great while, you can use lens flares for an artistic end, like this example here. But most of the time, they just wash out the picture. They're in the way, they dominate the picture, and just create a lot of havoc. This is an example of the actual Hasselblad lens hood. A piece of plastic just snaps on the end real easy. Question is, did they pack a lens hood? The astronauts who went. Now, I know I would. I'm pretty sure Marcus would. He's a professional photographer. I'm not. I still would bring one. And yet, look what happened. This is the moon mission, right? Get all this blown out. This is an aperture flare. You can see the 5 blades of the aperture in the Zeiss lens. You can see the inverted pentagon shape. That's the aperture inside. Another question is, I just have incidentally, was this the result of an f8 or f11 aperture? I highly doubt it. It's pretty large. Washed out pictures, loss of contrast, sundogs, just all kinds of crazy optical artifacts that resulted simply because for want of a $5 piece of plastic, haziness. You know, these are all artifacts that are from the bouncing light beams when you're shooting into the sun or close to the field of view relative to the sun's axis. You know, you have all these diffracting rays. In the early days, early investigators actually thought those are beams of a ceiling. That's how confusing this is. What is this? I don't even know. I mean, this is unbelievable. Wow, you know, this is incredible, you know. All this could have been avoided. All this washed out loss of data. Think of these pictures as data, right? You know, you only have so many pictures that you can take on the moon. This isn't digital, guys. There's no raw file to push up the latitude of the contrast. This is analog film, real film, emulsion. There's no coming back from this, you know? And you only have so many. Look at this. What is this? Just, I mean, what a terrible loss of data. All for want of a $5 piece of plastic. Look at these diffracting rays. There's aberration, this chromatic aberration. Incredible, you know, within the rays. Something that Hasselblad's proud of avoiding, you know. So look at this, another unusable. I could just go on and on. These are just random examples I took just from Apollo 11 and Apollo 12. Alright, so let's introduce you, ladies and gentlemen, to the super pebbles on the moon. Here's the reference number for this photo, in case you want to look it up yourself. But I just wanted to direct your attention to these special pebbles on the bottom of the ground below the LEM. So why are these pebbles so special? Well, they must have some super property, some property of physics that is unexplainable, because they're about the size of a peanut, or maybe, you know, even smaller. They're very small, very tiny, and yet despite 3,000 pounds of thrust directly under the engine bell of the LEM, 3,000 pounds of thrust, force just gushing down, those pebbles did not move, not at all. They didn't move, there's no streaks, they just stood their ground. I want an engineer to explain to me what physical property kept those little pebbles in place. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is the photo. This is the one that flipped me. I'm convinced that we did not land on the moon because of this very photo. All right, this is it. This is not a spacecraft that landed on the moon, okay? This is just some kind of a model, and let me show you some examples of what I mean here. So let's zoom in. You're gonna have to zoom in really close. So we're going 500%, 800%, 1,000%, over 1,000% zoom. All right, can you see them? See that, guys? Scotch tape. That's right, Scotch tape. Taped on the back of the LEM. That's just paperboard, guys. Really? This is not a spacecraft. This is not something that landed on the moon. It's just I don't know what it is, a model or something. All right, let's take a look at the same picture again. Do you see anything else funny? Interestingly enough, this is also the Super Pebbles, but let's take a look at this crater, all right? Something weird about that crater. Look how close they landed to it. Supposedly they landed, right? See, I made a little outline to show you. That's the square crater. It's the only square crater on the moon, and they found it. They landed right next to the only square crater. Now, just for reference, here's from a picture from Apollo 11, the previous mission. The same back of the LEM, the previous LEM, the same craft, or, same design. No Scotch tape, right? Still looks pretty fake, though. So now I just want to talk about, end the video and just talk a little bit about my personal thoughts, if you're interested. I just have a hybrid theory about the moon hoax. I think we went to the moon, all right? And I think we orbited the moon. I just don't think we landed on the moon, okay? Now here's a picture from Apollo of the moon. And this is from in the archive, of course. I took this in my backyard with my humble little D3500 camera, all right? And a cheap lens. And this is an Apollo picture, all right? And this is, again, my backyard. Hopefully it'll come up here. There we go, backyard camera again. So I'm just alternating the two. Why is this important, right? So, well, this is important because the shots I'm showing you of the Apollo, they're impossible to take by telescope here on Earth, okay? So either one of two things. It has to be one of two things. Either these are shots of a model of a moon, right, as we've commonly heard, or they really are real, right? And I personally believe that these particular photographs are real. I believe that we sent men to the moon, orbiting around the moon. So anything, in other words, anything you see, any picture you see of the Apollo missions taken in the craft is real, right? Here's another example. We're going to talk about the Van Allen radiation belts. Here is the Earth and the moon to scale. The moon is about 30 Earths away, and it took the astronauts 52 hours to traverse that distance, okay? Now, I know it took 3 days for the whole mission, but that you have to include the time for orbiting and decelerating and all that good stuff, because they still had to orbit, right? So now what I'm doing is I'm overlaying. It was really hard to find this to scale. These are the Van Allen radiation belts. Everybody loves to talk about the belts, but look how small they really are. It's really hard to find a true scale of the belts, all right? You always see these cartoon. Here's an example of a cartoon Van Allen radiation belt. It's totally not the scale. This is not the scale. This is way, the inner belts in particular are way too large. This is more like a Van Allen shell. I don't know. I'd call it a shell. It's not a belt. It's a shell. Well, these are not accurate. So whenever you see these in a video documentary, just remember that they're not the scale. So here's my thoughts. I could go on and on, but I believe that you have one side, the believers, and you have the Apollo detectives, or the people that believe the moon was hoaxed. I believe that somewhere in the middle is the truth. I think, honestly, after all these years of looking into this, we're both right, we're both wrong, and the truth is somewhere in the middle, all right? Here's an example. This is staged. This is fake, right? This is not a real picture of the moon. That is a real picture that was really taken from a spacecraft. I don't think they could have faked that. It's too good. That's staged. That's not real, all right? It's a fake, whatever, scale model on a stage. That is a real picture of a crater, and they're orbiting over the moon, right? So that's a fake picture. This is probably a real picture, So anything that was taken in the craft and from orbit in a craft, anything that was not on the surface, staged, fake. I can't tell you how fake that looks. And this is probably a real picture. And this is a fake picture. But kudos to the team who did this, because they put a lot of effort into landscaping this fake hill. A lot of work probably went into that, I would imagine. This is probably a real picture taken from the moon, from orbiting above the moon. Anyways, they're circling around it. And here's another example of a fake picture. They couldn't even bother to glue the antenna correctly in the center of the dish. It's funny. So there you go. I just want to share my thoughts on everything, and thanks for watching. It's okay if you don't agree. It's just my personal thoughts. I just thought I'd throw it out there. I mean, I've watched and listened to every possible video, pro and against, everything from Ralph Renee's stuff all the way up to, Bill Cooper, James Collier, Bart Sibrel, all the videos on the Apollo Detectives channel, Scott Henderson, Marcus Allen, etc., etc. And of course the other side, the Busters and everybody else. So I think that's the truth is somewhere in the middle. I think we really did send them out. We were able to send people out to the moon. We sent animals to the moon. The Chinese sent animals to the moon, turtles and cats and dogs and, tadpole, just all kinds of animals. And it was just crazy, so, and that's all documented. So they would have had to fake all that, as well, which is really hard to believe, so I believe that we had the capability of sending men to orbiting the moon. I just don't think we had the capability of landing on the moon. Okay, and that's a huge difference between just orbiting. We orbited dogs, we orbited turtles. Anyways, you get the idea, right? So it's a huge difference between orbiting and landing. Just like the movie Apollo 13. It's almost like Ron Howard was trying to tell us something there, so it's a thought I just like you to entertain. It's a possibility, it's a possible solution to that. It checks all the boxes. It solves all the problems, most of the problems on both ends of the spectrum, of the argument. I don't think we're ever going to really know, the truth. They'll never tell us, of course, And finally, I just want to say too that I really was saddened when I heard astronaut Collins passed away, because I think they were really good men. We really have to give them a lot of respect for just climbing on top of the Saturn V and standing up. They were doing what they thought was right, and they were good men. They were not, I really didn't like the fact that some investigators badmouth them or down them, so they just did what they thought was the right thing to do, and that's respectable. That's not, is that really a bad thing?